Today, I'm thrilled to feature the incomparable guitarist Dave Stryker. Whether you've heard him leading his own group or alongside legends like Stanley Turrentine or Jack McDuff, you know why the Village Voice calls him one of the most distinctive guitarists to come along in recent years. With 35 albums as a leader and a career spanning decades, Dave continues to shape the world with his signature sound and unparalleled artistry. And on January 10th, 2025, he has a new record coming out with a 30-piece studio orchestra, and that's called Stryker with Strings. Goes to the movie. So, Dave, good to see you.
Good to see you, Abe.
Yeah. So, Dave, before we scheduled this interview and I started reflecting a little bit, I thought about one of the times I've seen your band play. One time in particular was at the bar next door with your trio, with the organ trio, and it made me, want to ask you the question of what do you think the most challenging thing about performing live is, performing this music?
Hmm. I've been doing it so long. It's it's not a challenge anymore. It's more fun. It's what I do. It's what I really enjoy doing. So certain times, certain instances, certain gigs could be more challenging if you're learning new music or you're reading music. That can be more challenging. I've found myself in certain situations like that in big bands or, when I've done some of my string projects, etc. But on a gig like the bar next door where I'm just playing organ trio, that just feels like home to me. And uh, I don't look at it as a challenge. I look at it as something I really love to do.
Is the
I'm out
is
there doing what I trying to, get my music out there.
Is that it? Would you, the reward is just basically just doing the gig in a sense?
Yeah, for sure.
No, that's great.
That's why, little gigs like that, they can be a lot of fun just because you know I like doing small gigs like that in little clubs. Just the people are right there, and you can you know that's what's beautiful thing about jazz. Just be in the moment.
Yeah, I was actually thinking too. I was listening to the Lou Donaldson record, Midnight Creeper last night, and I knew we were going to be having this talk today, and it made me think, Dave Stryker would have been very interesting and really cool to hear on this record. If you could go back and play with any of the musicians that you had dreamed about playing with who aren't here anymore, is there anyone that comes to mind you would have liked to hire to be in your band?
Well, I don't know if I would have been able to hire him, but I sure would have liked to have played with Elvin Jones. I got to see him play many times, and he was even using guitar players when I first came to New York. Every time he came through, I would go listen to him. He's absolutely one of my favorites, and he's on all the great records. So many great records. But in particular, records that I listened to growing up were the Grant Green records with Larry Young and Elvin Jones as the core trio, and then they did 4 records together for Blue Note. And one record had Bobby Hutcherson, one record had Hank Mobley, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And one record was Larry Young's record called Into Something with Sam Rivers. So I just, that's how I kind of grew up listening to those records. So when I got a chance to hear Elvin, and of course, Elvin with the Coltrane Quartet, that would be, yeah, he would be one. But I've been lucky, I've got to play with so many great musicians
Oh,
over the years.
unquestionably,
Yeah,
unquestionably.
over the years. So I'm a lot of my dream people that I've got to record with and have in my bands. People like Billy Hart and Victor Lewis. Great drummers. McClenty Hunter, the guy in my band now. Steve Johns. So many great guys. Um, so yeah.
No, I'd only ask that question unless I really admired someone's playing so much that I knew that they could, take Grant Green's place in a sense. You know what I mean? Um,
Well, yeah. I don't know
but
about that, but
well, either
there's only
either
one Grant Green, but at this
yeah.
point, I feel like I'm I've been doing this so long, I kind of hopefully have my own thing going on.
Well, that's another good thing. How did you find your voice? Like, there's so much history in this, and was it a particular performance where you started to feel it come through? Was it maybe a certain couple of months or something where you sat and decided consciously? When does that transition come into really becoming your own voice as a
Well, it
guitarist?
just comes over time, I believe. And being able to, I've been doing this for so long. Um, I came to, I started out in Omaha, where I'm from, playing in rock bands, and then getting into jazz and playing at like the Hilton, doing 6 nights a week, 4 sets a night.
Straight ahead
Hilton,
jazz
playing
in those.
playing standards, as well as the first 2 sets would be standards, and the second 2 sets would be like top 40, and always been able to play all kinds of different styles and done different gigs. But when I went to New York around 1980, um, I started meeting a lot of people, going to jam sessions at lofts, things like that, and started trying to get my own gigs and writing my own music always, and have my own groups. And then I was lucky enough to get to work with Jack McDuff for a couple of years in 1984 and 85, and that followed that with about 10 years with Stanley Turrentine. So hearing guys like Jack McDuff, as a guitar player, as we know, the history of the guitarist in his band, Grant Green, Pat Martino, George Benson, and on and on. So that was a hot seat for a guitar player. Um, and then, and a guy like Stanley Turrentine, these guys had individual sounds. So I think some of that must have rubbed off on me, like trying to have my own thing. And it just comes about, I think it just comes about naturally from playing, writing, recording. Uh, Eventually your voice is going to come out, and you're going to be influenced by the people that you listen to and loved growing up, and then you take that and you expand upon it. So the
Sure.
people I liked listening to guitar wise, the Grant Greens, George Benson, Pat Martino, Jim Hall, all the greats, Kenny Burrell, they all kind of live in there, and you kind of take a little bit from everybody, and then eventually you start to get your own thing going on.
Sure. And
Only natural.
you've put out a lot of music. You're always pushing forward. Um, but as artists, there's always that term, writer's block or something like that. Do you ever have moments, of stagnant, stagnation, creative block, so to speak, when you're growing?
Sure, I think we all do, but a lot of times having a goal or a gig or a record date, that's a good way to get rid of that because you have to come up with, I was lucky with around 1990, I got a record deal with Steeplechase, a Danish label, a jazz label, and pretty much recorded an album a year for the whole time, 20 years I was with them. And always, that led to other projects and other recordings. And I always found that, knowing that I had a record date coming up, I would think about what I wanted to do and who I was going to use on that record date, and try to write music that, thinking of them in mind, the players, whether it was Billy Hart or, different horn players, Steve Slagle. Of course, we had a group for many years together. Um, but yeah, I find that having a, a goal, or that goal could be just learning the music of somebody I'm going to be playing with, or uh, trying to write some music for a new record or a new project, arrangements, whatever. That helps me get rid of writer's block.
Sure. So it's a what
because
you know.
I have to do it.
You know, so in a sense, it's important to have things to look forward to keep pushing forward, whether they're recording sessions or gigs, something like that.
Right.
Can you share a time where a non-musical experience, maybe a book or, life event that really influenced your approach to playing guitar?
Well, I think, that the just your life experiences, everything influences your music. It has to, it's, I think Charlie Parker was one that, said you got to live it, it comes out of your horn. So, my family, my traveling, my vacations, seeing beautiful new places. You're right, reading an inspiring book, uh, going to church, uh, yeah, and just having a rich life informs your music and makes you a more well-rounded person. That affects your music. As far as a single instance, also, of course, listening and being inspired by not only records but live performances, getting to hear Wayne Shorter or getting to hear Elvin Jones. And I was lucky that I got to hear a lot of the greats while they were still here. Herbie, Bill Evans. Um, that's always inspiring too. You know, to hear music, maybe go to a great play, all kinds of the cultural things that we're blessed to have can have a positive impact,
No,
I
so
think.
balance is very important, is what you're saying. You had mentioned family and vacations, that sort of thing. Being a jazz guitarist, jazz musician is it's not for the faint of heart, I don't think. To be completely honest, I mean, my mentor told me when you decided to become a jazz guitarist, you basically decided to make your life a living hell. Which is there's a certain amount of truth to that, I think. What's a mystery about what it's like to be a jazz musician? Is there a misconception people have about this life, or you wish more people understood? Maybe, even younger jazz musicians or people from the outside looking in that you feel strongly about?
um well, music is a calling, and um if you really love it, it's not something, like I think I'll become a jazz guitar player and that's how I'm going to make a living. It's just you're going to be a jazz guitar player because you want to play music and be creative and interact with other musicians and take it to that level that you can get to sometimes with when everything is running right and in the right situation. But the reality is, as far as a way of making money, it's not that realistic. You have to be well rounded and be able to play different kinds of gigs and do different things. Uh, I fell into teaching in the last 15, 20 years. Um, just after being on the scene playing a lot, I wrote a book, and one thing led to another, and now I am teaching at I just retired from Indiana University after 11 years of commuting out there.
You were going
Ev-
to Indiana
Yeah, every other week. Yeah,
on a
David Baker
plane?
hired
On
me
a
out there.
plane
Yeah, we flew out there. Yeah,
every 2 weeks.
and I'm also at Rutgers here in New Brunswick, at Montclair State in Montclair. And this year I just started at William Patterson in Wayne, New
Oh,
Jersey. So I'm in the trenches, teaching the young generation, and I think everybody realizes. I try to make sure they understand. It's you probably will have to do other things besides play music to make a living in this world that we live in now. And I certainly have done my share of jobs, through the years, whatever I had to do to pay rent and things like that. Um, So, you have to really love the music and not, you know, have illusions that this is going to be a way that you can really make a living, because it's just too tough. There's not enough gigs, opportunities. You have to be well rounded in whether it's different aspects of the music business that you could, get into, recording, playing gigs, teaching. You got a whole lot of different things can add up to a career, as well as, what we call a day gig, whatever you end up with. And I have two sons that are in their 30s now, and we're all trying to figure this out. This thing called life.
Well,
Uh,
it's amazing to that you're teaching at those three universities. That's tremendous.
yeah. Yeah, I enjoy it. I feel like I had the opportunity to work with some of the greats, we mentioned Stanley Turrentine and Jack McDuff and Jimmy Smith, Freddie Hubbard, these kind of people I got to play with through them, Dizzy Gillespie, James Moody, all these great players. And unfortunately, we know that they're not around anymore. And so I feel that I can try to pass on a little bit of what I learned from them uh, to the younger generation. And
Sure.
so I enjoy doing it, and helping other players, start to get it together is very gratifying. It's
I'm
wonderful.
wondering if you knew my mentor from Berklee College of Music. I mean, you may not have, but his name was John Thomas. He just passed about last year. Did you ever?
The name is familiar, but I didn't know John. No.
Yeah, yeah. Just kind of curious. So I guess the when you're talking about you want the younger musicians to know that it's okay. You want to play jazz, that's fine, but you've got to have other things in the works. And that's okay because we live in 2024, almost
Absolutely. And
2025.
also, a lot of people, there is more than jazz. A lot of people like rock, a lot of people like country, a lot of people like blues, a lot of people like hip hop. It's it it's important to do what you like. But knowing jazz and jazz harmony is only going to benefit any kind of music you get into. So uh, it's a worthwhile thing to have that, be
Now,
well rounded.
yeah, and you also mentioned that when you get on stage and you do a gig like the bar next door, that it feels like home for you. When can you kind of walk me through what the day might be like when you have a gig at night? Do you need to practice a certain amount? Do you try to get pumped up and maybe listen to some music, or you're just going through your day to day and just you get to the gig
Well,
and it's the
I've had
gig?
a working trio with Jared Gold on organ and McClenty Hunter on drums for over about 20 years now. And so we have so much material to draw from. For instance, this Friday I'll be playing out here in Jersey at Shanghai Jazz, which is a Chinese restaurant that has a jazz policy. And a lot of the clubs that you mentioned the bar next door, which is no longer here. A lot of these places have come and gone. Trumpets, it was another one we had here. Cecil's was another one we had in Jersey. But just having little gigs like that, when in between the bigger gigs, like for instance, I have 3 nights at Birdland coming up January 24th, 25th, and 26th. That'll be a big gig for me.
Is that the organ trio for that?
It'll be the organ trio plus Troy Roberts on
Okay.
tenor sax. Um, and we'll probably try to do some of the, we're going to, for instance, do some of the music from the record that's coming out. That's always been kind of what I did, is about once a year, try to get a record out and record, and then, gig around that record. And so this Friday, I'll be at Shanghai Jazz, and we've played. Steve Johns is now playing drums on some of the gigs, because McClenty took the drum chair position at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. So he's down there. He comes up and does certain gigs. He was up here recently, and he'll be there for Birdland, etc. But I just sent out an email of some tunes that I want to try playing on the gig from the new record, which is a 30-piece orchestra, and we'll obviously to go pare it down to a trio version. Will be interesting. So that's probably something that I would be working on after we get done here today,
Yeah,
taking
that's
care of
great.
business and learning, relearning the music and things like that. I have I'll be doing a tour with Bob Mincer and the WDR Big Band in February. We about 10 days in the States. They're coming over here from Cologne, Germany. I did a record with them over in Cologne a couple of years back, and we'll be doing some of that music. So I'll have to revisit that as well as learn some of the music that they'll be playing. And the Yellow Jackets are actually going to be playing some of those gigs with us. So I'll have my homework to do, in that kind of situation. This week, I could just go in and these smaller gigs that I do around town. We can just call tunes, as we say, call standards, or But I'm always thinking ahead, and I'd like to do another trio record coming up. So I'm starting to think of ideas and arrangements of what I might want to do.
Sure.
Um, you
Let's
know,
go. Yeah, let's go back. You mentioned the loft scene. You were part of the loft scene. A lot of people that's the everyone hears about the loft scene. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
well,
Who would
when
be
I
at
first
those
came to New
sessions?
York in 1980, there was on like 27th Street, there was a drummer named Chris Braun. He had this big, huge loft. We'd go down, we'd have jam sessions all the time, and guys would come by, and uh, Joe Lovano and Ralph Lama and different players. And there was a place called the Star Cafe. I remember on 23rd Street, we would play on Sundays there. Conrad Herwig, a longtime friend of mine, had a loft on 28th Street, I think. You could afford to pay for a loft back in those days. It's Things have changed completely now. But there's people play sessions in Brooklyn. I ended up moving to Brooklyn too after about I guess 83 or so. And there's always been sessions at people's houses, but the lofts were pretty cool. They'd be these giant lofts, and
I hear
they
people
make
they would play
make a
all night,
room for
right?
a bedroom and have a kitchen over here, and then plenty of room to play. And maybe there'd be, not you wouldn't have to worry about it. Might be a factory or a restaurant or something downstairs, so you could play all hours of the night, and you wouldn't have to worry about bothering people.
You guys could play all night, huh?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Wow, that's
And it
tremendous.
was also it went back, way back before I moved to town. That was I know Sam Rivers had a loft called Studio Rivbea, and there was other places like that. I think those in the 60s, 70s, stuff like that.
Do you think I kind of this is my personal feeling. You can comment on if you agree or not. I feel like New York might have changed a little bit ever since COVID, the jazz world, so to speak. Do you have any feelings about that, or you think it's
Well,
still the same?
we lost a lot of musicians and a lot of people and a lot of clubs. The Jazz Standard we lost, the bar next door you mentioned. Um, it's always changing, but there's still a healthy scene. Smalls, Mesro, those are places are cooking every night. Spike Wilner, there's a lot of clubs out there for young players to be hanging out and trying to make sessions. Still, it's always going to be a scene in New York, because this is it. The Big Apple. This is where it all happens. I'm of course out here in West Orange, New Jersey, so I feel like I have the best of both worlds. Being a little bit in suburbia where I raised my family, etc. But I can jump on the train or drive into the city anytime, and it's there.
No, I know exactly West Orange. I know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
No, it's you have the best of both worlds, you're saying. Let me ask you this. When did you catch the jazz bug? What made was it the Grant Green records that you were told me about in the beginning? Like what made you like something has to happen? What was it for you?
Well, I was playing in bands. I was gigging from an early age. By the time I'm 13 or so, 14, I was playing in rock bands and gigging around. And I think, hard rock and stuff at first. Cream was the first record I bought, Disraeli Gears, Eric Clapton, learning tunes off the radio. Then we got us, we started getting into groups like Santana and Allman Brothers, bands, blues-based kind of bands that were kind of improvising, taking solos. Somebody like Carlos Santana, so that would probably be like the first time I, started, I guess, getting a little hipper, right? The music you're listening to. Then I just remember going to a jam session in Omaha at a place called the Generation Gap Lounge, and it was a guy named Bobby Thompson was the tenor player, and they were playing standards, and they'd have a jam session, and I showed up, and Bobby guess saw a little potential in me and invited me over to his house and started showing me standards. Girl from Ipanema, and I Remember April, Green Dolphin Street, just the tunes they would play. Wrote out the chords and learned how to play. I had a couple teachers in Omaha, a guy named Ron Cooley, and then a great guitar player named Billy Rogers was very inspiring to me. He had already left town, but we hooked up later. And so I started kind of learning tunes, and then the opportunities in the rock band I was in, we were able to do, if we knew standards, we could do those gigs like I talked about, the hotel gigs. And I went to a jam session at the Union. I was in the Union, and I went to a jam session, and they were playing a song for my father, and I got up there and started playing my rock licks over it. And a guy said to me, you can't be playing that rock and roll, and this is jazz, And so I went to the record store, and I somehow walked out of there. I'd never forget Homer's Records in Omaha. I walked out of there I went in, I said, "Where's the jazz section?" And I came out of there with George Benson, Beyond the Blue Horizon, CTI record, and Coltrane, My Favorite Things.
Beautiful.
Once I started listening to jazz, and that just, from there, it just took off to Miles and Sonny Rollins and Pat Martino and Grant Green and all the great stuff that's out there. We'd go play a gig at the hotel or whatever, and then we'd all come back to my ma's house and be down in the basement playing pool and listening to sides all night, and maybe jamming. And then I so just started getting more serious and listening to Wes Montgomery and say, man, this guy is incredible, trying to figure out the solo he played on No Blues, at Smoking at the Half Note, or Pat Martino. And, just listen to the record over and over until it started to get into my ear.
Oh, yeah, man. That's
Grant Green. Then eventually we went it down to one of the local musicians said, hey, there's this jazz camp down in Wichita, Kansas that Jamie Abersol is doing. So we went down there in the summer, drove down there for a week. And the first year, Jerry Hahn was there, a great guitar player, and all these great musicians Jamie had at the time, Woody Shaw and Thad Jones, and so many greats. And the first year, Rufus Reed was my combo instructor. And the next year I went back, I had gotten better, and my combo teacher was Joe Henderson, great sax player.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that was super inspiring. And from that, I just started getting much more serious about jazz. And then about the 78, I decided to make a move. So I moved out to LA for a couple of years, and used to go out to Jimmy Smith's Supper Club there and sit in, and got a gig playing organ trio down in the hood, and playing in a reggae band, all kinds of stuff.
No,
and then decided to move to New York because I had a buddy of mine had moved there, and went to visit and realized, man, I should be in New York. And I ended up coming here in 1980.
No, that's I mean this is it's so great to hear your history and when you were Joe Anderson that'll certainly set the standard for this music. So Dave,
Oh yeah.
where can people find you and your website and social media, all that stuff if you'd like to tell us.
I have a website, davestryker.com. All my music's available there. You click on it, it'll take you to davestryker.bandcamp.com, and that's where you can buy my music. I
Beautiful.
I've got a lot of records out, probably about 37 now. A lot of them, about 20 or so, were on Steeplechase, and then I started my own label uh, about 10, 12 years ago, Strike Zone Records, and so I have a lot of records available on there. All kinds of different stuff. It's worth checking out. I think if you're
No,
interested.
definitely go check it out, and I'll try my best to make it to Birdland on if I'm not working on in January. So thanks for
Great,
letting me
yeah.
know about that.
That's going to be January 24th, 25th, 26th, and a lot of other gigs in between. And I'll be at Smalls in March. Like I said, I have that tour with the WDR Big Band. I'm really excited about this new record, though. The Stryker with Strings Goes to the Movies. It came about when I was at Indiana University. They contacted me and asked us to do a PBS special for Wes's 100th birthday, because Wes Montgomery, of course, is from Indianapolis. So for PBS in Bloomington, where IU was, I collaborated with Brent Walrab, a great arranger who was my colleague at Indiana University, a arranger and big band guy. And we had a studio orchestra with strings, big band, and even an organ trio in the middle. And it did very well. It actually won an Emmy, the West at 100.
Oh wow,
And
that's
it's supposed
amazing.
to it should be going national PBS soon. But I said to Brent, I said, I'd love to record something, a big project like this. And he was able to. He knew somebody that we got some backing for it, and we ended up doing. I didn't want to do Wes's music because I love Wes too much. I just, I didn't want to even try that. I said, and I'd done it on the PBS special. I survived that. So I said, how about we both love movies, that we grew up with the movies in the 70s and stuff, a lot of great movies. And I said, why don't we do movie themes? So we worked on it for about a year, and it's coming out January 10th. I'm really, really, really excited about it.
No, we will definitely check it out. Thank you so much, Dave.
You bet.